everybody for joining us here this afternoon for the first ever Vermeer Midwest First Rule HDD class. We know it's a unique time for everybody and with the social distancing, and we want to give an opportunity to give back to the directional drilling community since we can't have our in-store classes right now that everyone looks forward to this time of year. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. So we're going to mute everybody so there's not a lot of background noise. If you do have a question, want to make a comment, go ahead and send it in the message chat room. I'm monitoring that right here on my cell phone, so we'll answer those as the questions come in, and try not to interrupt Paul too much here. But if you do have a question, please send those over, and we'll try to get those addressed. So if you get any technical difficulties, anything like that, please text those in, and we'll try to get you help. Make sure you don't miss anything in this nice presentation today. So this class today is a condensed version of our classroom mud school. This is kind of Mud 101 class. We're going to go through everything from your ground conditions, the type of drilling fluid, type of reamers, drill heads, and cover some of the safety products too that all the directional drillers should be using to be safe out there. So a little background here. Paul is the Vermeer Midwest drill specialist out of Fishers, Indiana. He's been with us for 32 years. Actually started Vermeer before we even had directional drill. So he was really got into directional drilling at the beginning, and seen a lot out there in the field, and really have seen the technological advances in the HDD world when it comes to drilling fluid, rig selection, and tooling. So he's a great resource for us. What else we got here? So the other thing, this presentation will be put on Facebook and YouTube to go back, and if there's something you want to look back on and have a question, you want to email your local HDD specialist, question that you find out here, you can go back and look at it on the YouTube channel or Facebook and review it again if you want to review it with your team. So look forward to you guys using that. What you see right now is the key contacts for all these states that the Vermeer Midwest is in. So you got Indiana, you have Paul is the HDD specialist. Central Illinois, that's out of the Goodfield store. You got CJ Cool. Chicago area, you got Brett Scroggins. Michigan, you got Robert Postmus. And then Missouri, you have Doug Hicks. So please write this information down. There'll be another slide at the end with their contact information. Reach out to the store. We do in classrooms training. They're 8-hour day classes. Once we get past this situation we're in, great resource. Customers in the Indiana area really love it. They take advantage of that situation. And then also your board specialists are available to come out on site to help you with difficult projects, or do online training or in the field training for new hires. If you have somebody that you want to train to get on a directional drill, or you just need training in general. You got a guy that's been drilling for 3, 4, 5 years, but thinks it's time to step up his game and really wants to learn some more about it. So these guys are great resources. They travel around. Paul's been everywhere from North Dakota to Mississippi directional drilling. So we've seen it all. So please reach out to us. Again, thanks for joining us today. If you have any questions, I look forward to seeing it on the chat. And now I'm going to turn it over to Paul here and let him get started. So thank you.
Welcome, everybody. I'm glad everybody's attending this. We're going to start here on some of the personal protection equipment that we use in the directional drilling world. We've got dielectric boots, our gloves, safety vests, hard hats, safety glasses, and if you're using some bentonite, you can actually get masks to be able to protect yourself for not breathing that bentonite into your lungs. So the first thing we need to identify is the soil conditions that we're drilling in. So the best place to probably do that is when you're potholing, at the depths that you're running. You could probably get a sample from that area, because that's going to be the depth you're running. So that's the best place to be able to get those samples. There is two different categories of soil. We've got a coarse soil and a fine soil. A coarse soil is anything that you add water to that it just runs out of it. That would be a coarse soil. So we would want to use something like a bentonite to be able to put some clay into that formation to be able to hold that water in our borehole. Your fine soils, you know, they're going to be a soil that when you add water to it, you can kind of make it a ball. It kind of holds water. It stores water. So we need to add additives into that water to be able to keep the water in our borehole without making it leach out into the hole to either get sticky on us or swell. And we're going to do a little bit of test here at the end and kind of show you some of that stuff. So we talked a little bit about the coarse soils. So the thing that they're not reactive, you know, they are what they are. So if you add water to those, they don't get sticky, they don't swell, they just get heavy. So we got to add stuff in there to be able to support them and keep them elevated in the hole so we can flush them out. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we mix some fluids here. So fine soils, like I said, you know, when you're adding water to those, like they do something in the ground. That's where we run into a lot of problems is we're not sure what kind of clay that we're in. So a lot of these tests you can probably do on your tailgate, and we'll do some of those here in a little bit. So the next thing is we need to be able to identify what kind of tooling do we need to have. There's all kinds of different style of bits that you can use. The first picture there is just your standard duckbill. They go from, you know, soft dirt all the way when you get into the hard shell situations. If you notice the shell situations, they got a little bit more teeth on the sides of them that allow you to be able to cut when you're and carve when you're trying to steer. Then when you get into the harder situations like cobble and gravel, the lance bit for our armor system is a great tool. Even with the lance bit, it does good in all types of situations. That's one of my favorite bits to use. If I'm not sure what kind of ground conditions I'm in, I'm going to grab that lance bit and take that with me. Then you get into the soft, medium rock, hard rock. These bits are about good up to about 7,500 PSI of rock. And they take some good techniques of being able to steer that type of bit. It's called the gauntlet bit. It's the one with the 3 teeth on the front. You can use the Navtech steer to be able to do that, to steer that. So it does take some practice to be able to use that bit. Then we get into more harder rock in our DR drills, where you would have different style of trichome cut bits to be able to use to cut that ground.
And an air hammer too. So we, in Vermeer Midwest, we are a Midcon dealer for the air hammers, and we do sell quite a few of those. And one thing I want to talk about on tooling here real quick, the lance bit, that's a great bit for hard clays. We sell a bunch of those here in Indiana. We got a lot of hard clays. In the summertime when it gets hard and dry and you just can't push that dirt bit, but there's no need for an air hammer or a mud motor situation. The lance bit can really make a 2022 and a 2440 look really good in ground conditions if you learn how to use the auto steer and the kind of the auto function on the oscillation. So, and Paul's getting ready to talk about reamer selection. You know, we've learned a lot over the past, I'd say 5-10 years on reamer selections. It makes a big difference when you're drilling in clays and sands and mixing these drilling fluids, being able to make a bore successful. So the days of, we're just going to use a bell reamer or a fluted reamer. I can't tell you the last time we've sold a big fluted reamer because we just learned so much about the paddle reamers and the open reamers and really make success here. So really pay attention to this piece here and maybe open up the chance to try different style reamers in your ground conditions. If you're only using the fluted for everything you do, I would definitely take a look at some of these other style reamers.
Like Troy said, you know, our number one reamer back in the day was a fluted reamer or a bell packer. They're not a really good mixing style reamer. So some of these, the picture you got here is, showing some open-faced reamers, is going to be able to mix that clay a lot better, so it'll allow that clay to get beat up to be able to flow it out. There's all styles of different reamers to use in your shots. So picking that reamer, we got to be able to use the right size reamer. So if you're not using the right size reamer, your annular space is not going to be right. So what happens there is you're going to have a lot of invert and returns if that reamer is not at the correct size. So you take your pipe times 1.5, and that's going to give you the size reamer that you need to be using to give you that enough annular space so that fluid can be able to be displaced by the pipe that you're putting in the ground. We'll talk a little bit more about that. This calculation here is kind of showing you what an open face reamer, what depths you need to be running at the size reamer that you're using, so you're not disturbing the top of the ground. A closed face reamer, you got to be 10 inches deeper every inch of reamer. So knowing that, if you're putting in a large pipe and they only want you to be 5 foot deep, you're gonna have some problems, invert and returns. There's nothing you can do about it. So a lot of cases we're not deep enough when we're doing our shots.
And one thing I've noticed, especially guys doing the bigger diameter pipe or just getting into doing bigger diameter pipe, is they'll go out and do let's say it's an 8-inch water main or something like that, and they want to put it in 4 foot deep because the water company's got to do a tie-in. And the next thing you know, you're getting all these intermittent returns. And the first thing that guys do, seems like, is they want to turn their water down. And that's actually the worst thing you can do, is turn your water down. The best thing to do is, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is make sure you're at depth for your reamer type and the size of pipe you're putting in, and make sure you're getting the proper flow with the chemicals that you need in your ground conditions to make sure that fluid is making it back to your exit pit. So as guys start to pull bigger pipe and starts, blowing out of the ground, the intermittent returns start coming out, they want to turn their water down, and that actually creates more of an issue down the road than it would be if you would actually turn your water up a little bit and make sure you have the right chemicals and right reamers. So something to think about there. Yeah,
definitely. Invert and returns are 90% of the problem is you're not using enough fluids. Something's happening downhole. The clay is getting sticky where it's sticking to each other, and it starts bridging off your hole. You start building up pressure downhole, and then it's going to actually come up to the top of the ground. And that's where a lot of people have problems with that. So filter cake and sand, this kind of a video kind of showing you, a lot of guys drill with water. So in this type of situation, you're going to start wearing your rods out quicker, your bits out quicker, your drill heads quicker, and you're not going to be able to steer as good. If you're using a little bit of product, you're going to be able to steer a lot better and be able to get those cuttings out. And that's going to take, the wear of your tooling down. So you can tell with the water, it just kind of rushes through the bottom. Eventually, if there was no bottom to that, there would be no water left in your hole. So all that sand is going to be in there just chewing away your rods and your bits. And then, they did mix a little bit of mud in that middle one, but it's not quite enough. So it's starting to flow down just a little bit into the formation, but it's way too far. What we're looking for is that third one there where it's only about 1/4 of an inch down into that sand. We want to stop that water from being able to leach out into the formation, because all that's going to do is create weight, and eventually it's just going to start caving in on us. So that's your filtration control. So there's other additives that we can throw in our mud to be able to help that filtration control. And all these tests you can do right on your tailgate. Mix up a batch of bentonite, put it in your ground conditions, and see what it's going to do. If you notice it starts to leach off, then we need to add something else to that to help seal that off to keep that as minimal as possible.
Yep, and then the picture in the middle there, the adequate drilling fluid velocity, if you think you're going to save some money by just putting in 2 bags instead of 3, what it calls for, or I'm going to put 2 pounds of super vis in instead of 4, what it calls in for, you're not doing anything at that point. You're just making dirty water, and you might as well just not use anything. Do it right. It's going to save you more money in the long run. It's going to save on the wear and tear on your tooling. It's going to save wear and tear on your drill rod, things like that. So if it calls for 4 bags, use 4 bags. If you just put 2 bags in your mix, you're really not doing anything for you.
Right.
And you're putting money in your tank and you're wearing out your tooling at the same time. So that's why I like to tell guys, mix, just do what the mix calls for your ground conditions and what works, and you'll be better off and save some money down the road.
Yep. So this kind of just showing you the gel strengths of bentonite. So each of those platelets there is bentonite, and this is in a steel situation to where they kind of stack on each other. There's a magnetic field there. There's a positive and negative charge there on those, and that's how they separate. So that's how it suspends the sand particles up into the hole. If we allow that particle to fall in the hole to the bottom, what happens is it starts bridging off on us, and then we're going to have inverting returns, and we're going to get stuck. So we want to be able to mix up our bentonite, get our gel strengths right, so there's suspension qualities in that mud, your product or your sand is staying up into the hole. So as we start pumping water, it goes into a flow motion. And then once we stop our flow, it suspends the product or particles and keeps it up into the hole. So bad suspension, this is what we're talking about here, is we've got to have a good suspension qualities or our product's going to fall in. So this is another short little video here kind of showing you. So you can all do this on the tailgate. Get your product or your ground conditions and put it in a cup, stir it up, and see how it's falling off. We don't want that. We want to be able to suspend that and keep it up into the top of the hole. So when we start flow again, it's actually going to get those cuttings out and not start bridging off on us.
This is your gel strength, right, Paul?
Gel strength, yeah.
So people often assume that you got thick mud, that you have good mud, and that's not necessarily true. What you want is good gel strength and good viscosity for your ground conditions. So there's two completely different concepts there. When I hear guys call and say, "Oh, I got 60-second mud," that means that's the flow rate of your mud. That's not necessarily your gel strength or your carrying capabilities of your drill fluid. So you got to make sure both of those are in check for the ground conditions that you're in.
So getting that vis up there to that 65, 70, whatever vis it is, that makes that pump work harder. Your flow rate, it takes more pump to be able to flow that stuff out. So keeping it at a lower vis, but having good suspension qualities is what we're looking for. We want to be able to allow that pump not to have to work as hard to be able to keep our flow, because flow's our friend. If we lose flow, then we're going to end up, sticking a pipe or having some issues.
And groundwater too. Groundwater can also affect your gel strength. You got to think about if you're mixing up 4 pounds or 4 bags per 1,000 gallons, and you're at a high water table, you got to remember you're going to be adding groundwater to those conditions too. And Paul will talk about some additives to add to that. You need to treat that groundwater so it's not invading your mix and watering it down to all of a sudden you had 4-bag mix in your tank, and then all of a sudden you put it down whole, and now all of a sudden the groundwater penetrates it, and now all of a sudden it's like you got a 1-bag mix. So you got to make sure you treat ready for groundwater too.
Yeah. So that would be your filtration control. When that first video we showed you those cups, there's some things in there that we can add in there to help that seal that off, to keep that from falling down on us. just showing you another poor suspension qualities when you're drilling. See how all the particles behind the bit is actually just falling off and laying in the bottom of the hole. We don't want that. That's going to cause a lot of friction, high torque. So that allows us to not to be able to drill as fast. It's going to make us hard to be able to steer. So if we're getting better suspension qualities, we'll be able to steer better, and our torque rating is going to go down. Obviously, we're going to be able to drill faster. So reactive clays, this kind of just shows you a little bit of what's going on if you're just using water. As you're drilling out, a lot of guys just drill out with water. And if you're in this reactive clay, you notice it starts swelling on us, starts just closing off that hole. So we got to throw something in that water to keep that from happening. So all these fluids that we're using or chemicals that we're using is buying us time. The ground's eventually going to take over, but we got to get something in there to keep that from happening. So then we get into pullback speed calculations. This is just a little chart. It kind of shows you some simple math of what reamer you're pulling, how much gallons per foot you need per size reamer. Safety factor is a real key. A lot of guys think a 1-to-1 ratio is enough, and a lot of times that's not. Especially in your reactive clays, it's 4 to 5. So whatever that number at the top on the reamer size is, let's start out with a 12-inch reamer, it's 5.87. If we're in some reactive clays, we'd have to times that by 4 or 5. And we'll do a little demonstration here at the end to kind of show you what kind of water it's going to take to be able to do a shot. So figuring out all your calculations before you get to the job allows you to have the right product with you, how much water you're going to be able to use throughout that day. Are you going to be using 10,000 gallon of water and you only have a 500 gallon tank? Maybe you need to get something bigger out there to be able to allow you to bore a lot faster and have more water there.
Yep, and we're going to show this in the calculation, but remember guys, gallons per minute and gallons per foot are two different things. And as we go through this calculation, you kind of think about that a little bit, that just because you have your mud pump set at 9 gallons a minute and you're drilling a 30-second rod, think about how many gallons of fluid you're actually getting in that hole to treat that clay or that sand. And if you're pulling that big reamer and you get it on 25 gallons a minute, but you're just pulling it back as fast as you can, you may not be getting enough drill fluid down the hole to treat the ground to be able to make a successful bore. And we'll walk through a couple simple calculations here, simple spread.
So we're going to kind of just say, hey, we're going to be using a 2440 today. We got a 400-foot shot. We're going to be pulling an 8-inch pipe. So our water pump output is 50 gallon a minute on a 2440. Our length is 10 foot. The bore length is 400 feet. And these are all calculations that, the bold numbers, we can change whatever that is and change the numbers, and it can do all the calculations for us. So our pipe size is 8-inch. And then we times that by 1.5, and that gives us our reamer size. That allows us to have the right annular space around that pipe to be able to displace the fluids or soils that we need to be able to remove. Then it comes down to gallons per foot calculation. So you take your reamer times reamer and you divide that by 24.5. And that comes up with the calculation down here at the bottom of 144.
Divided by 24.5, that's your gallon per
Yeah.
foot is 5.9, the 1-to-1 ratio.
So with this shot, we're in reactive clay. So we gotta times that by 5. That's our safety factor. So you take your gallons per foot times the safety factor, which is 5, and that's going to be 29 gallons per foot. So as we go down here, So 29 gallons a foot, you times that by the length of your rod, and that equals out 294 gallons of rod. So a lot of guys, this is where guys run into problems, is not calculating this out. Just because you can pull that reamer faster than you need to, you're not getting enough water in the hole. And that's where you run into the problems. When it says you need 294 gallons, you need 294 gallons.
And this is also a good point too to bring up on rig selection. So a lot of time guys don't jump up to bigger rigs to pull the pipe that a 3650 can pull. They jump up to the bigger rig because they can pump more water. They can get more done in a day. Let's say a 60 by 90 that's pumping 150 gallons a minute. If you're pulling 18-inch reamers all day, yeah, you know, some ground conditions you can get away with a 40 by 55. But you get limited to how much work you can get done because the mud pump's only at 70 gallons a minute versus 150 gallons a minute. You can pull your rods faster and be more efficient downhole.
Right.
And if you're in ground conditions where you need those ratios of 5-to-1, 6-to-1, where you're just maxing out a drill rig on the water pump, not necessarily the pullback or the rotational torque, you got to take that mud pump. It's very critical to take that into account.
So as we go down here, so we've got 294 gallons per rod. You divide that by your pump output, whatever that is. But this one's a 50 gallon a minute. So we divide that by, and it gives us a 5 minute, and I round it off to 6 minutes per rod. That's how slow you have to go to be able to pump 294 gallons. So that's where it comes in, like Troy was saying, is maybe we need a bigger pump here to be able to be more productive.
Yeah. So on that board, and for that pullback, for example, you know, you're limited to 6 rods a minute, but if you can pull, if you start pulling 3-minute rods, you're only putting half the fluid you need in that hole. You have no more water pump to pull any faster. And then the same thing, let's say you can only pull a 12-minute rod. Then you can turn your water pump down to 25 gallons a minute and slow down. Then you also have to take into account, you know, the guys that are mixing the mud too. If you just have that 1,000-gallon mixture back there and you turn that up to 50 gallons a minute and start pulling, then you're chasing water every 10 minutes. You got to kind of balance that out to where you maintain a consistent pullback, you contain a consistent flow, and you're not wearing your guys out mixing mud all day long. So really set the job site up to what you're wanting to do and the time allowed to get it done too. So.
Right. So the last calculation here is, you know, a lot of guys don't know how much water they're going to need for that day. So you take your gallons per foot and you times that by the length of your bore, and that comes out to 11,755 gallons of water that you need for that job. For the 12-inch pullback. So those are all keys that tells you how much water you're going to be getting that day, how much product that whatever you're mixing to have with you. So you can figure out, you know, if you're doing 1,000-gallon tanks, that's about 12 tanks worth of water. So
if it's a half hour there and a half hour back to get water, and you only got 1,000-gallon tank, and you got to make 11 trips, you're going to be there a little while. So
yeah,
plan around that. Know where you're going to get your water and how long you're going to be there to get the job done.
So we'll show you a little bit of some demonstrations on some fluid mixes and what to look for. Give us a second here. We'll get set up. So we got a little bit of the Proaction Fluids. We use the Proaction Fluids here in Indiana. They came out with this stuff, what was about a year ago?
A couple years ago.
Maybe 2 years ago. And I've mixed a lot of different polymers, different stuff. And what I like about this is that it's simple and it works. So when we're dealing with clay, you obviously have to have a polymer in there. It's a long strand polymer, and what it does is it allows it to wrap around that clay particle and keeps it from sticking to each other. So you got to have a polymer. You got to have a wetting agent in there, or a soap, to keep your tooling clean, so that'll allow you to be able to drill or actually pull a reamer and keep that reamer clean. Then when you start getting into reactive clays, then we add the clay lock in there to be able to keep that spot back.
We'll talk about pH level real quick.
Yep.
Asphalt.
So with the Proaction fluids, they say that the ProDyne will actually condition the water. But really, you should check your water with the pH strips just to see how good your water is. Most products like about 9.5 to 10 on the pH level. And if you can do that, your product's going to last you a lot longer. You are not going to have to use as much. So it's really going to save you money in the long run.
And soda ash is another product you can use to condition your water. We definitely recommend having that on your truck at all times for all ground conditions.
So just treating clay with just water. So we can show you just a little bit of demonstration here what water just does. Yeah, we can drill with it, but eventually it's going to take over. And the white stuff, we're going to just pretend that it's clay. This is kind of just a demonstration that I use. And if you notice, that's starting to get thicker and thicker as I stir here. And eventually, I added quite a bit of water in there. If you were drilling that's going to be, or pulling a product through that, it's not going to go very well. You're going to start, stretching pipe in that situation. So we got to add polymers in there to keep that from happening. They also sell their replacement of bentonite, but I don't recommend it in all different types of same situations, but it does work in some. If you're in the water table, it definitely doesn't work. And they're working on that kind of a mix. So we'll do a little sand demonstration here, just show you that it does work. And this is the bore shield that I've got mixed up here. Might be kind of hard to show you, but there is a circle there. You see it? I'm going to spill it here. So it does work. I mean, it made a borehole right there.
You see the filter cake there? That's what we're talking about with any bentonite or any stone and sand. That's what you want.
But it doesn't work in all situations. So definitely, if you get on the water table, it's not going to work too well.
So Paul, for 500 gallons, what are we mixing here for clays?
So clays, we're going to mix each bottle. This has a text that you can text, and it'll actually send you back a mixing instructions. So this bottle will treat 500 gallons of water. Your ProDyne will treat 1,000 gallons, and your clay lock will treat 500 gallons. And that's all just a start out point. Some ground conditions take a little bit more than others. It just depends. But I will tell you that clay lock is, they came out with a new product called Polycap. we've got places in southern Indiana and northern Indiana that is really, really reactive clays, and that clay lock or the polycap worked really well, and they kind of put that into the clay lock. So this is going to be changing here in the next month or so. So your bore shield, that treats up to 100 gallon of water. And then your geo sweep is about a 500 gallon tank to one bag. And then the Provis is another additive that you could add to bentonite. So it's got like your Supervis and your Platinum Pack kind of all in one package. So you could add that to the bentonite to help your suspension qualities and your filtration control.
I would definitely recommend that you get with your local Vermeer HDD specialist and get the recipe for the area you're going to be in. Most of those guys have drilled all over their states or the surrounding states, and they know where you're at and where you're going. And then we always have a mix for an area. Southern Indiana, there's a mix that we give to all the contractors that we've used for years and worked really, really well. Northern Indiana, by Fort Wayne, there's a mix up there that we've drilled so much up there. These guys have drilled all over the place, and they know if it's in my product or a Proaction product or a Baroid product, or maybe they have another product that they like to use in that area. So I definitely reach out to your local Vermeer specialist and find out what product or what mix you need for the type of ground conditions you're going to be in.
Another big complaint on the Proaction is when guys leave it in their tanks, they start smelling. So they came out with some drill clean so you can clean your tanks out to kind of keep the bacteria down in your tanks. So that really helps that. So that's the Proaction. If you have any questions on Proaction, please give me a call and we can kind of talk a little bit about it. So the next one here is going to be your bentonite mix. So pretty much got 4 products here that I use. Probably those are the go-tos that I go to. We got Supervis here and Platinum Pack. So Supervis is going to help that suspension qualities. So with bentonite, we're adding 2 bags of bentonite per 500. And then I would add Supervis in there to help that suspension qualities to keep that product from falling down in the hole. The Platinum Pack is what's going to help seal that off on your filter cake. So that's our filtration control. That's what I would add in the Max Gel here to be able to keep that filtration down. Then as we get into the gravels and the heavier products, I switch over to Plex. Everybody that's used this in the past is had troubles with the bores, and then they started using this and they were able to complete those jobs. Awesome stuff, but you got to be really careful with it. It doesn't like any other polymers. It's basically all you use, and you definitely need to use soda ash with mixing the Plex.
Plex mixed
with the Max Gel. Yeah, so Max Gel's straight bentonite. So we also got a Max Bore. Max Bore's got some other additives in it that the Plex does not like. So you have to use Max Gel with the Plex.
So with the Plex here, guys, what we're talking about with this is if you're in, I'd say, golf ball size gravel up to your bigger cobbles, and you're having trouble floating some of those the bigger, heavier, denser materials out that are in that coarse category, definitely a product that I would at least give it a try. Get with your local rep and get it out there on your job sites to use if you're having issues in that real gravelly, coarse sand situation. It's a great product to use. So basically what it does is when you put it under pressure, it turns into a liquid and it'll help, and it has a great gel strength. It'll carry the bigger materials out. But when you stop pumping and change your rods out, that gel will actually stiffen up and keep those bigger boulders at suspension. And then so when you go back under pressure again, and it starts to move, that you don't have to pick that material up off the ground, off the bottom of your hole again to get it to move. It's already in suspension.
So it's suspending this gravel here in this little jar here. So it does work. That's my go-to. Got a little sand here, and I'm going to show you a little bit of tests that you can do on your, once you mix up your bentonite. So the first one we're going to do is filtration control, right? So we want to make sure that that line doesn't drift down into more than 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. So it looks like I've got pretty good filtration control built here.
So here's water. There's water in the sand. It's got the sand sitting on the bottom. You shake it up and the sand just falls back to the bottom. That's what you don't want to happen.
So after the filtration control, then we can do a suspension test. So I basically stir this up, kind of use the black sand just so people can see the particles in the mix to be able to do a suspension test. So you can actually pick up watch a particle in this, and you want it to be able to stay suspended in your hole. Because if it starts falling off on you, then you're going to start having that bridging, and then you're going to have some issues.
If everybody wants to jump back over to the presentation real quick, we'll close out here. And again, just want to thank everybody for joining us today, our first HDD class online. Hope you found some value in it. Again, reach out to your key contacts in your local area. If you're here in the Midwest area, if you're not, get with the local dealer. Most dealers have a HDD specialist that can come out and help you with your ground conditions and your HDD drilling fluid needs.
You can also shoot any of us an email of topics that you would like to cover. And maybe we can do this again sometime on some different topics. And maybe just send us an email or send myself an email how this class went, what your thoughts were. I'd sure appreciate it.
So right now, each location, on your drill fluids, we're running kind of a special program. We're going to throw a golden ticket in. You're going to win some free stuff if you got the golden ticket in your box of drilling fluids, it looks like. So we take advantage of that. Some pretty neat stuff to come out to you guys. So again, thank you. And next Friday at 12:30, we're going to have another session online covering DCI locators, some common questions that you guys take every week, every day out in the field, kind of some troubleshooting you can do on the new Falcons, and maybe learn some tricks and help you in your directional drilling process. So again, want to thank everybody for coming out this afternoon and joining us, and hope you found some value, and stay safe out there. So take care.